and welcome to another episode of AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. My name is Camille Renner, and I am the Associate Editor of AutoSuccess magazine. Today with me in the studio is Greg Uland, the Vice President of Marketing with Reynolds and Reynolds. Welcome to the studio, Greg.
Thank you. Appreciate it. It's nice to be here. It's a great setup you guys have.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for coming on down. To start, can you tell our audience a little bit about your journey into the automotive industry, what you do with Reynolds and Reynolds, and maybe just a brief overview of your company?
Sure. I would consider my journey to start when I was about 10. My family owned some auto parts stores, some retail auto parts stores. So I started cleaning the office and cleaning the bathrooms when I was 10, and I got $10 a week or whatever it was. So that was the start of my journey. And then when I was 12, I was old enough to see over the counter, so I could start selling parts. And I did that growing up, and kind of continued through my young adult career. Eventually made my way to Reynolds and Reynolds, which as far as what the company does, I hope most people know, but we're really leading the way into the future of automotive retail and finding ways for dealers to be able to retail anywhere, wherever the customer is. That's kind of where we are today and where we're going to be going forward. So figuring out ways to do that and do it successfully.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I do think most people do know who Reynolds and Reynolds is and what you provide to dealerships.
Sure. Now
more than ever, I would say what you provide to dealerships is important because the customer process of buying a car is changing so much. I'm assuming you agree with that.
Oh, sure.
How else have you seen the industry change? What are your thoughts on this change of the customer behavior and car buying process?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a whole new world. It wasn't a switch that was flipped, right? These things have been happening for some time, but we've made an effort to really stay connected with consumers and trying to understand what their preferences are, what their expectations are, what they're experiencing when they do interact with a dealership, when they do buy a car, when they do go in for service. So we've done a lot of surveys and a lot of studies around consumer expectations, consumer behaviors, and like about every study that you see, consumers are willing and in many cases interested in doing more and more pieces of the car buying process online. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody, but there's just a certain comfort level that keeps growing exponentially. The struggle is not everybody's the same, right? Each consumer is unique, each consumer is different, so their expectations at the individual level are going to be different than the next person and different than the next person. So there isn't a standard. We used to be able to lay out a sales process, and these are the 6 steps, and this is what happens, and we walk the customer through it, and we get them in the store. Goal number 1 was always get them in the store, get them in the store. Well, in today's world, that customer may or may not see value in coming into the store. There are different weights that they're going to put on each step of that process as far as what value it brings to them. So do they want to come in and test drive the car? A lot of them, yeah. I mean, there's a big value add to that. Do they want to come in and talk with a salesperson or talk to an F&I person? Most of them, when we talk to them, the answer is yes. They want to be educated. But do they want to maybe negotiate a price, or do they want to sit there and sign? Well, let me ask you this. If you have to print out a car deal, you know what the average car deal is, kind of top to bottom, if you laid it end to end, single copy?
Like how long
it would be, yeah.
In feet?
Yeah.
40 feet?
Actually, it's 39 feet. Average car deal is 39 feet.
I just bought a car, so that I understand the amount of paper, yeah.
And so if you just bought a car, you sit down, and it doesn't feel like a good use of time for you to go through page by page and sign each one of those pages or put an initial on all these pages. And you probably, I'm guessing, you tell me if I'm wrong, but you probably felt a little bit of pressure, like maybe you couldn't read through everything you were signing. You had somebody sitting across from it, and you were just trying to get it out of the way. So, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but my assumption is you probably didn't feel like that was a great use of your time. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So again, just different consumers have different value placed on different pieces of that process. So being able to be flexible and have options depending on the customer, and finding ways, frankly, to make the most of those opportunities. So if they see value in it, how can you capitalize on it? So to your point, it is definitely a different world out there, and it's going to continue to change. It's not going to be a standard, I don't think, and each consumer is going to continue to be very different from the next. Each one of us are individuals. So being able to be flexible and finding ways to adapt and really execute at a high level is going to be important.
Absolutely. How can dealers create good processes still while remaining flexible? How do they account for all these different types of consumers?
Yeah, well, there's two ways to look at it, and I think both of them are important. So the one is looking at the consumer as an individual, right? And what process are they going through? And the other that's at least as important, if not more important, is looking at the dealership personnel and the process they have to go through and what's available to them. So when you look at the tools inside of the store and what you're able to provide to your sales team, providing tools that allow them to have a single seamless process, no matter where that customer is too. We talked about that a second ago. There are going to be some customers that are in the store, there are going to be some customers that are online, and most of them are going to be some blend of the two. But those pieces can shift. There's not necessarily a linear flow to the sales process where you can say, okay, this step's going to be online and this step's going to be in store, because you may not feel comfortable submitting a credit application online, and I might. So there's a lot of different variables. So I think the biggest thing to get back to your question is understanding both the consumer process and what they want, but also understanding your internal processes and what your sales team goes through when they are talking to customers, and empowering them to really provide the best customer experience possible.
Absolutely. Have you heard of sales teams struggling with that at all, or struggling with how to give the best process for the customer, or adapting to the times?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty universal, not just in automotive, just in retail in general.
Sure.
You have all these different tools. So you think about maybe taking it into the dealership level. You have a customer that walks in the door, and the salesperson is going to be in their CRM. That CRM may or may not have a desking tool included in it. If it doesn't, they're going to have a desking tool. The salesperson will work the deal in the CRM, and then it'll go over to the sales manager, and they'll go back and forth. They'll negotiate the deal. They may have, I don't know what your experience was like as a consumer, but was there any paper involved? Kind of, what payment do you want to be at? And that
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're also working manually off of a piece of paper. Then you're working the deal in the DMS to structure that. Then it goes over to F&I. So you have all these tools in place in the store. But if you rewind the clock a little bit and you think about what that consumer went through, that consumer, depending on the dealership, depending on the brand, they may have went through a lot of that stuff already online, or they thought they did. Right? So you go through and you're shopping for cars, you land on a car that you like. You may have went through and kind of looked at, okay, what's my monthly payment going to be? What's my credit score? Where am I at? What's it like if I lease versus buy? Did you go through any of that stuff where you were looking at options? Yeah. Okay, so you do that online, but you get into the store, the salesperson might not have any visibility to that. Or if they do, It's really hard to get to. So they don't know all those steps that you took. So they're basically starting over. So instantly you're frustrated because you thought you already went through all this, right? So it creates that kind of conflict already, and then they're trying to go through their processes. And then when you start to have different customers that drop off and go into store at different places, it gets even more convoluted. So you see it over and over again, like I said, in all retail, but in dealerships especially because of the complexity of the transaction.
How do you think dealers can improve their F&I processes?
Well, I think it's important to take a step back and really understand and realize how F&I has evolved over the years and how dealerships have really created a value for the consumer in the F&I office. There are a lot of consumers out there that don't know how to arrange their own financing, or they couldn't. There are a lot of consumers out there, and actually when we talk to them, most of them don't understand the products available to protect their investment. I mean, a vehicle is a huge investment for most people.
Second biggest most people will make, yeah.
Right. But without being educated a little bit, you don't know what products are available, whether that's an extended warranty, whether that's gap insurance, whether that's wheel and tire. There are products out there that actually are a wise thing to buy, but without understanding them, your default's no, right? So in an F&I world, there's a tremendous amount of value that consumers see as well. It's not just dealers saying, hey, come talk to me. Consumers do want to talk to somebody in F&I, and they need help in a lot of instances. So that's a big reason why F&I has been such a good part of the business for so many dealers. It's not because we found a way to make some more money. It's because we were bringing value to that consumer, so they needed our help and they said yes. And that's the great thing about business in general, is just finding those ways to do that. Now, in today's world, you think about F&I, and I go back to where you're bringing value to the consumer, right? And do they want to understand F&I products? Yep, they do. Okay, so how do you do that, or how do you maybe give the customer options for that to educate them in different settings? They might not be sitting across from me at the desk. Maybe they want to be at home. Maybe they can't be there for whatever reason. So how do you enable that interaction where your F&I manager, your F&I producer is still working with that customer, still educating that customer, and that customer feels comfortable and willing and wants to buy, even when they're not in front of you. That's a big challenge and something to look at. And then you think about the value of lining up financing. That's another one where how do you facilitate that as a dealership when that customer's not there? How do you make sure that you're presenting the options that are viable options for them? And then you go even a step further. We talked about signing that 39 feet of paper. How do you make that possible where that consumer feels like maybe it's a better use of their time? Or maybe they have a co-buyer and they want to review it with them, or maybe they want their spouse to look over it, or who knows? There's a million different scenarios where that person might not want to sit in front of you and sign 39 feet of paper. So how do you enable them to sign that contract electronically, and then as a continuation of that, also make that contract fundable electronically by the lender? So there's a lot of moving pieces there, but there's still tremendous value in F&I. And in today's world, it's about finding different ways to deliver an experience in F&I that mesh up with what's valuable to the customer.
Awesome, yeah. Continuing with F&I, what does Reynolds and Reynolds specifically do to promote value in the ways that you were just discussing?
We clearly put the dealer first, right? And trying to find ways to help a dealership retail anywhere, no matter where that customer is, whether they're online, whether they're in the store, or more likely, probably what you experienced, some combination of the two, right? What used to be, 50 miles was a long way for somebody to travel to buy a car. That's nothing today, right? I mean, 500 is sure in a heartbeat, and even people across the country will say, "Can you ship it to me? I'll pay for it." So in this world where the market is expanding for some dealers, efficiency of employees is going to determine how much volume they can do. So making sure that your employees have the tools needed. We talked about that frustration that there can be in a retail environment.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so that single seamless process for the salesperson, for the sales team, is really important to maintain and even increase efficiency no matter where that customer is.
Great. Thank you for going into that. Obviously, you have given our audience a lot to think about as far as places for improvement within the industry. So what should dealers do now? How should they move forward with improving their F&I processes, with improving their digital retailing, with partnering with different organizations? What's your advice to dealers?
What I've seen, everybody's business is different, but what I've seen a lot of people move towards and really execute at a high level is taking a step back, and a lot of it's about planning, right? So taking a step back and mapping out two different journeys. First, you have your consumer journey, right? What does that look like today? What is the customer going through? What is their first touch point? Where are they finding your inventory? What steps are they going through online? What does it look like when they come into the store? Map the whole thing out and be honest, right? What does it really look like? And then take that process, and then you also map out your employee journey, right? What does it look like for the salesperson, for the sales manager, for everybody involved in that deal, for the F&I manager? What happens and at what time? And then once you have the process mapped out, kind of lay in there, what tools are you using to facilitate the process? And then when you have that, look and say, okay, is it helping or is it hindering? Is it a positive or not? Is it a value add or not? So lay those pieces out and then set those off to the side, and then come over and lay out, all right, what do you want it to be? Right? What would good look like, for both the consumer and for your dealership? If you could have anything you wanted, what would it look like? So you do that, and then you have a gap in the middle, right? And you take that gap and you say, all right, what are we leaving on the table with this gap? Are we missing more customers? Are we missing more opportunities to sell an F&I? Are we missing what is actually on the table? And you identify that, and only then, once you kind of have that picture and you assign a value to that gap, can you say, okay, what do we need to fix? And once you do that, and if you do decide to make changes and to make improvements, set goals with that. Set performance metrics that you want to measure against that are really what you're trying to accomplish, and then hold yourself accountable, hold any vendors that you've added accountable, and say, like, this is what we're trying to do. Are we getting there? And understand it's just an ongoing process. That's what makes this business fun. Is I think at least is we don't really sit still, and dealers don't sit still.
Absolutely.
And it's always changing. So make sure that it's a constant evaluation of how are we doing, and are there new ways for us to improve our processes or our tools. So I'd say kind of where I would leave that is do a thorough evaluation and then never stop.
Awesome. Thank you for that advice. And since there are new problems every day and it's always changing, I'm sure we will see you back here again soon to talk about whatever the industry looks like in a couple of months from now.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Thank you for tuning in to this AutoSuccess Executive Spotlight. Today's guest has been Greg Uland, the Vice President of Marketing with Reynolds and Reynolds. Thanks for coming in, Greg.
My pleasure. Thank you.